Scenes contain violence. Viewer discretion is advised. The sun is rising over the hills as a group of men silently approaches a family's cabin in the Appalachian woods. They have murder on their mind. These men are trained hunters, and their footsteps make no sound as they creep up behind their first victim. After their work is done, a father and most of his family lay dead, the smoke from their burning cabin still rising high into the morning sky. The killers retreat into the forest with the family's severed scalps in hand, leaving only 3 children alive. But this was only the beginning. By evening, a Native American Cherokee tribe will be blamed for the crimes, which would spark the biggest war the people of Appalachia would ever see. I've been researching the Hannon Family Massacre for a while now, and what I've discovered sent chills down my spine. Not because of the brutality of the massacre, but because the men who scalped that poor family may not have been bloodthirsty Cherokees after all, but their own countrymen. Welcome, Darklings. Long before modern headlines, history was filled with brutal, pure evil crimes that will make you question your humanity. Subscribe and step into the shadows with us. You'll never see history the same way again. Before we descend into this dark chapter of frontier justice, I am curious, where are you watching from right now? What time is it where you are? Drop a comment below and let me know. Let me take you back to the spring of 1776. While men in Philadelphia debated independence, the Appalachian frontier operated under different rules entirely. Out here, 3 miles separates you from help. Fate decides whether you lived or died. It was about land, blood, and survival. William Hannon and his family were right in the middle of it all. His farm sat in Old Tryon County, North Carolina, right on the boundary of Cherokee territory. Present-day Polk County, the North Pacolet River Valley, beautiful country, if you could ignore the constant dread. William was in his mid-40s, originally from Virginia. He'd moved to the Carolina backcountry in the 1760s with his wife Sarah Prince. They'd built something here, a sturdy log cabin, fields of corn, a large family. They were happy. Until Sarah died, some years before 1776, leaving William a widower with many children to raise alone. They lived by themselves, isolated in the dense Appalachian woodland. Their nearest neighbor was miles away, but they had no enemies. And apart from the cold, hunger, and wild animals, they had nothing to fear. Or so they thought. Meanwhile, a group of shadowy figures held a meeting. They needed a war to break out in Appalachia, and there was only one way to do it. A family had to die. It had to be brutal, horrific. It had to make people angry. It had to demand retaliation. At the farm, the eldest Hannons were teenagers now, strong enough to work the fields. It was about time too. Poor William was tired of doing everything himself. He had 10-year-old Edwin, 7-year-old Winnie, 3-year-old John, and the baby, William Jr. Their little homestead was thriving that spring. The corn was being planted. The family was preparing for another season. William couldn't believe it. His luck was finally turning around. Sadly though, he had no idea what was coming. But to understand what happened to the Hannons, we need to understand 1776 from the Cherokee perspective. For decades, colonial settlers had been pushing westward, treaty after treaty broken, boundary after boundary crossed. The Cherokee watched their hunting grounds shrink, their towns surrounded, their people squeezed into smaller and smaller territory. All so people like the Hannons could have land and a place to live. Therefore, when the Revolutionary War began and British agents approached Cherokee leaders with promises, some listened. The British offered something the colonists never would: protection, a guarantee that westward expansion would stop. And here lies a clue to who may have really been behind the attack. Thus, with the fate of their tribe on the line, in late May 1776, Cherokee village councils met and debated. Young warriors wanted immediate action. Blood, revenge. Older chiefs urged caution, but the pressure had been building for too long. It was a dam about to burst. So the councils aligned with the British. War was declared. Coordinated raids on frontier settlements were planned for late June and into July 1776. And innocent farmers like the Hannons were targeted. But here's the problem. The Hannon family was attacked in March, or early May, depending on which source you trust. Either way, it was before the councils had given the order, before the coordinated offensive began. So if Cherokee leadership hadn't greenlit raids yet, who would want to strike this isolated farm? It's a spring morning. William Hannon is in the field with several of his older children, planting corn. The earth is soft. The sky is clear. Just another day of backbreaking frontier labor. Back at the cabin, Edwin, 10, and Winnie, 7, have been left to mind their younger brothers, 3-year-old John, and the baby. Children raising children. That's how it worked out here. Everyone had their part to play, and that may have been what saved their lives. Suddenly, without warning, figures emerge from the tree line. There's no time to shout, no time to run for a rifle. These attackers are professionals. They rush the field in seconds. William Hannon is struck down with a tomahawk. The older children working beside him fall the same way. Scalped. Bodies left where they drop. The raiders move to the cabin. Inside, Edwin and Winnie hear it. The screams, the chaos, the sound of their father and siblings being killed in the field. Winnie grabs the infant. Edwin seizes little John, and they run. Into the wilderness, into the river brush, anywhere but here. Behind them, the cabin is ransacked, then set ablaze. Flames consume everything the family owned, everything they'd built. The attackers spot the fleeing children. 2 warriors give chase. Edwin is carrying 3-year-old John, but the boy is too heavy, too slow. The warriors are closing. Edwin makes a choice no 10-year-old should ever have to make. He drops his little brother. Edwin dives into the dense undergrowth and hides, holds his breath, stays perfectly still. The warriors catch John and kill him. Right there, a 3-year-old boy, murdered where he fell. Meanwhile, Winnie runs in a different direction, the baby clutched to her chest. She finds a canebrake, thick reeds near the river. She pushes inside and doesn't move, doesn't make a sound. Even when the baby starts to fuss, she somehow keeps him quiet. The raiders search, but they don't find her. After what feels like hours, the attackers leave. The homestead burns, smoke rises, and 3 children emerge from hiding into a world that has been completely destroyed. But their story doesn't end here. In fact, it's only just beginning. Edwin crawls out of the brush. Winnie emerges from the canebrake, still holding the baby. They find each other near the smoking ruins. Their father is dead. Their older siblings are dead. Little John is dead. The cabin is ash. They're alone. But by some miracle, they're alive. And they know what they have to do. They have to get to the nearest neighbor, Colonel John Earl's place, about 3 miles downstream along the North Pacolet River. So 2 children, one carrying an infant, begin walking. They take turns holding the baby when their arms tire. They follow the river. They don't look back. 3 miles. On foot. In shock. Traumatized beyond measure. When they finally reach the Earl homestead, John Earl and his wife Thomasine take them in immediately. The Earls are family friends, distantly related through Sarah Hannon's Prince family connections. They don't hesitate. These 3 orphans, the sole survivors of the massacre, will be raised as part of the Earl household from this day forward. None of them will speak much about that day. The memories are too painful. They were too young to process what happened, but the community remembers. In no time, the story spreads, and the frontier demands justice. And who do you think will be blamed? News of the Hannon Massacre ripples through the settlements like a shockwave. Remember, in 1776, there were no police, no investigators, no courts. There's only the militia and frontier justice. A man named Captain Thomas Howard commands a small fort in Polk County, a blockhouse where settlers can gather in times of danger. He's been itching for a fight with the natives, so when he hears about the Hannons, he musters his men immediately. The assumption is instant and absolute. Cherokee raiders did this. To the men, the tactics match, the location makes sense, and the frontier is already primed for conflict. No one questions it. Howard enlists a guide, a Cherokee man named Skooka, who's allied with the settlers. Together, they track the attackers' trail through the mountains, through a narrow gap that few white men know. Late June 1776. After a month of searching, Captain Howard and his militia catch up with a small band of Cherokee encamped at Round Mountain, also called Warrior Mountain, near present-day Saluda. There's no way of knowing if they were the perpetrators, but Howard had come too far to return empty-handed. So he orders an attack. The militia strikes at first light, catching the Cherokee completely by surprise. The fight is short and brutal. Most or all of the Cherokee band is killed. Fewer than 20 men. Their bodies are buried on the mountain. The settlers call it the Battle of Round Mountain, but it was more like a slaughter. They consider it justice for the Hannon family. The mountain gap Howard used for his approach becomes known as Howard's Gap. The road through it still bears his name today. But here's the question no one asked in the heat of vengeance. Were those Cherokee at Round Mountain the same men who attacked the Hannon farm? Or did Captain Howard just kill the wrong people? After that retaliation, the fire of vengeance spreads. One attack leads to another, and soon, all-out war. One family's tragedy is the spark that plunges the Appalachian Mountains into a summer of violence that consumes the frontier. After the Battle of Blood Mountain in late June and July 1776, the Cherokee councils declared a meeting of their own. In their eyes, the settlers have just massacred one of their bands, and they officially declare war. They start with coordinated raids across Carolina. Frontier families are attacked, cabins burned, people killed. The colonial response is overwhelming and merciless. General Griffith Rutherford musters the North Carolina militia. Colonel Andrew Williamson leads South Carolina forces. Thousands of men march into Cherokee territory with one purpose: total war. But you must ask yourself, who benefits from this war? The Cherokee? The settlers? Or what if it's another group who stands to gain the most from this? Still, the war has begun, and there's no going back. General Rutherford's expedition alone destroys 32 Cherokee towns in western North Carolina. Entire families wiped out, crops destroyed, food stores obliterated, entire communities displaced or killed. The cycle of violence escalates beyond anything that came before. What began as isolated raids becomes systematic devastation. For the Cherokee, 1776 will be remembered as the Year of Blood, and the Hannon family's name is used to justify it all. But the surviving Hannon children's stories don't end there. But first, let's return to that fundamental question, the one that's bothered historians for decades. The Cherokee councils didn't authorize war until late May 1776. Coordinated attacks didn't begin until late June. Yet the Hannon Massacre occurred in March or early May, depending on the source. That's a significant timing problem. Cherokee warfare during this period wasn't random. When councils declared war, they planned coordinated strikes on multiple settlements simultaneously. Maximum impact, strategic targets, a lone attack on a single isolated homestead, weeks before the war officially began. That doesn't fit the pattern. T.J. Holland, a Cherokee historian and researcher, has studied the Hannon case extensively. His analysis is blunt. The details don't match typical Cherokee tactics of that moment. The timing is wrong. The target selection is wrong. The execution is wrong. Moreover, Cherokee oral history from that region contains no record of an attack like this. No stories passed down. No tribal memory of striking the Hannon farm. If the Cherokee were responsible, you'd expect some acknowledgement in their own historical accounts. But there's nothing. Which raises an uncomfortable possibility. What if the frontier got it wrong? What if everyone blamed the Cherokee because that's who they expected to blame, but the real attackers were someone else entirely? In the revolutionary southern backcountry, lines were blurred. American patriots fought British loyalists, settlers fought native tribes, and sometimes people disguised themselves to muddy the waters even further. There are documented cases from 1776 of loyalists, colonists loyal to the British Crown, operating with painted faces or alongside native allies to attack patriot settlers. The goal was terror, propaganda, and strategic provocation. In other words, they stirred up trouble between settlers and natives to drag native tribes into their war. This happened again in July 1776, just months after the Hannon Massacre. A group attacked Lindley's Fort in South Carolina. The force included Cherokee warriors and white loyalists, some with painted faces to appear native. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a tactic. So consider this scenario. A small loyalist guerrilla party, possibly with a few native allies, hits the Hannon farm early in 1776. They use Indian-style warfare, tomahawks, scalping, burning, to make it look like a Cherokee raid. Why? To inflame anti-Cherokee sentiment, to provide a pretext for the kind of massive retaliation that eventually comes. The American Revolution was well underway by this point, and turning settlers against natives may have been a way to distract armed patriots and force them to fight other battles. William Hannon may have been known as a patriot sympathizer in the area. Targeting his family would serve multiple purposes: eliminate a political enemy, terrorize other patriots, and blame it on the tribe you want the militia to attack anyway. The lack of theft supports this theory. Nothing substantial was reportedly stolen from the Hannon homestead. No horses taken, no supplies looted, no weapons seized. If this were a standard raid, you'd expect the attackers to take anything useful. But if the goal was terror and propaganda, you kill, you burn, you leave, you create a story. So, was it a group of loyalists disguised as natives that carried this out? It's likely, but there's another possibility. Perhaps it was Cherokee who attacked the Hannons, but not under tribal authority. A small band of young warriors acting ahead of the councils, renegades. Men angry enough about settler encroachment that they didn't wait for official approval. The frontier in 1776 was chaotic. Groups of warriors from various tribes, Cherokee, Chickamauga, Creek, even Shawnee from further north, sometimes moved independently. Young men seeking revenge or glory, operating outside the command structure. This would explain the timing anomaly. It would explain why Cherokee oral history doesn't preserve the attack. The councils didn't sanction it, so it's not remembered as an official action. It would also explain the tactics. A small, unsanctioned group might strike opportunistically at an isolated homestead rather than wait for coordinated operations. But there's a problem with this theory too. We have no evidence, no names, no specific band identified, no witnesses who could confirm tribal affiliation. It's plausible, but still only speculation. Here's what we know with certainty. The Hannon family was brutally attacked. 7 people died. 3 children survived. The frontier community immediately blamed the Cherokee. Captain Howard killed a Cherokee band in retaliation. Here's what we don't know: who actually committed the murders? And those at the time didn't know either. Yet within weeks, the story becomes fact. The Hannon Massacre is Cherokee violence. It's used as evidence in calls for military action. It's cited as justification for burning dozens of towns. Over the decades, the story grows. Details are embellished. Victim counts inflated. Some accounts claim 10 people died instead of 7. Early chroniclers add lurid descriptions of bodies stripped, mangled, and hopelessly disfigured. One source incorrectly reports that the baby was killed, when in fact William Jr. survived and lived to adulthood. These aren't malicious lies. They're the way frontier trauma gets processed and transmitted. Every retelling adds layers, but legends obscure as much as they reveal. So, what happened to the survivors then? Edwin Hannon grew up in the Earl household. He became a prosperous landowner, respected in the community. He married Caroline Earl and established a farm. He had children, grandchildren, a lineage that continues to this day. William Jr., the infant who was carried through the wilderness by his 7-year-old sister, also prospered. He married, had a family, and lived a long life. Winnie never married. She lived quietly in the Earl home, helping raise her brother's children. The trauma of that day never leaves her. None of them talk much about the massacre. What's there to say? They were children. They survived. Their family didn't. Meanwhile, the Cherokee paid a different price. The Rutherford expedition burned through their territory like fire through dry grass. 32 towns destroyed. Crops obliterated. Winter stores gone. Hundreds of people displaced, starving, killed. The Cherokee lose land in the peace negotiations that follow. Lose autonomy. Lose any illusion that they can coexist with the expanding settlements. The Hannon story is one tile in a mosaic of devastation. Each side remembers it differently. To settlers, it's proof of the threat they faced. To Cherokee, it's one more pretext used to justify their destruction. And the truth? The actual identities of the attackers are still unknown. But you tell me, who do you think massacred the Hannon family all those years ago in 1776? If you enjoyed this true story, please consider subscribing, and let the next story find you exactly when you want it most.